So we are back and we are talking about more communication. And so the other time we covered more communication on the aspect of just how, you know, sometimes your communication style might not be the best or it just may not be understood. I ain't gonna say it may not be the best, but it just may not be understood. So back in this video, there's a lot of things that we can cover in communication, but in this one, we just want to talk about some of the struggles in communicating, or making sure you clear in communicating stuff like, finances or whatnot, roles, uh, different things that, you have going on within your household, family, or whatnot. And so, yeah, I just want to cover some of that. Does that sound cool?
Yeah.
Okay, so I know one thing that a lot of people struggle with. I know we struggle with. We still kind of struggle with it, but just finances and stuff. So, you know, sometimes I feel like you can kind of get things crossed by not being clear. So when say if y'all doing a family budget, you doing who's responsible for what, however you do your income or whatnot. For us, we join a lot of stuff together, so we have to have a lot more conversations with just how we do things. And so I think sometimes we've gotten our wires crossed as far as like pretty much how we gonna handle the finances, how we gonna handle things or whatnot. And so yeah, what do you feel like is been like a big struggle, I guess, like with us dealing with those types of things? I know just some of the communication of like when we say we're gonna save and stuff, it's like being specific, like how's that work as far as like, I don't know if I'm being clear with that, but when it comes to, I guess, saying, okay, you got two people, and people say, okay, we see we're in a position that we need to save more. We spending way too much. You know what I'm saying? I think sometimes you can get it crossed to where both people are on board and saying, okay, we do need to save more. But I think sometimes, the lack of communication or solid communication in those areas, more specific communication. So, say for two people, your idea of saving can be different than my idea of saving. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I'm saving nothing, and then your idea is like, hey, we need to be saving $500. So when I come down to it, I could be like, hey, I'm doing good just saving $100, and you like, no, we need to be saving $500. So does that kind of make sense? Something?
It does kind of
Yeah.
make sense. I think part of that communication is like the accountability part of it. So one, like when we set an agreement, and like you were saying, like we might agree on, like, yeah, we're spending too much, so let's pull back some on that.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't clearly come up with those boundaries of, okay, what's doing too much. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so let's not go over this line. But I think we found ourselves in the situation where we agree to not, like in this area, to pull back some on
Mm-hmm.
spending for eating, let's say. But it hasn't been set boundaries where it's like, okay, this is the set amount that we won't go over
Mm-hmm.
in the week, in the month, yada yada. So I think that's kind of helpful to be clear of as well. Like, along with saying, okay, let's cut back some in our eating budget and our spending for eating out. Along with that, make specifics. Okay, let's say we're not going to spend over $50 a week for out to eating. That wasn't always clear with us until we kind of started coming to the conclusion, like, yeah, this ain't working, and figuring
Mm-hmm.
out why it wasn't working. And I think also, like, being more specific on, as you were saying, like the budget, getting a clear, direct, definite agreement so we'll know the expectations. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
we say, yeah, let's save, let's have an account where we're just making savings. And then my idea is I might be thinking through, like, well, we're going to have to put up a sufficient amount because we're going to be calculating like daily expenses like for household needs and necessities of life. So I'm thinking a little more. And then, as you said, you might be thinking like $100. Like that ain't zero, but that's putting up something. That's allowing us to gather something. You know what I'm saying? But I think just being clear about those specifics, so each of us can understand the expectations of the other, and then figure out from there like what we can compromise on and how we can make it fit for the both of us, comfortable wise, comfortability.
Yeah, I got you. But yeah, I do think, whatever you try to communicate, just make sure that, it's clear.
Clear.
And, I don't think we're here to really tell you how to do your budget or whatnot, but just, on the communication style, because I think it can, like, either complicate things or make it less complicated if, y'all just take the time and be clear with each other. I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying yesterday. You have somebody that you are joining with, it's like if you married or whatnot, plan to be married, you have somebody that you joining with and y'all becoming one. So I think y'all both have to be clear on how y'all actually doing things. I think, it creates a lot of mud in the water when, you know, like you have a thing that you thinking and then she has a way that she's thinking or whatnot, and I think it can kind of just cross a lot of wires and stuff, depending on whatever y'all decide to do in the budget, but just be clear and specific. Don't expect that the other person, or don't assume that the other person already knows what
Yeah,
it is
knows your
that you
thoughts.
thinking
Yep.
and the way that you thinking. And I think sometimes that's one of the things that gets us frustrated is because we like, duh, like dudes already know how I think about this, how I feel about this. But, believe it or not, nobody's a mind reader. Nobody can really understand where you at in your train of thought. And I know even for me personally, I'm the type of person that, man, I think a whole plan together while me and Ro are talking, and I can think of a whole plan in my head, and I forget that I haven't conveyed that verbally to her. You know what I'm saying? And she's lost because I'm like, yep, yep. I'm just thinking through some stuff, and she's like, what? Like, I done thought of a whole plan, and sometimes I done followed that whole plan through, after we left a conversation that we didn't even get a chance to discuss. But in my head, I done thought it out, you know, on the inside, but I haven't spoke it out loud. And, I'm looking to do some other stuff and I'm looking to go ahead and make some moves and stuff. And so she's kind of lost, like, hey, what the heck are we doing? Like, and for me, it's like, it's plain as day. I already told you. And you know what I'm saying? Like, I thought you knew where I was at, and I think, even still today, I think that still can complicate and muddy some of the waters because, we on two different pages, not even understanding that we on two different pages. You operating one way, I'm operating one way. And then when it all meets ahead, she looking at me like, what the hell you doing? I'm like, what the hell you doing? We, you know what I'm saying? We both just kind of messed up in that, because we didn't communicate, the goal and the purpose or whatever of what it is that we set out to do, whether it's finances, whether it's, whatever the case is, but I do think that, having clear communication can definitely help in a lot of ways of your life. And so, I think this is one way that, we kind of got, crossed with finances, or that you can get crossed with finances, and ways that we've, kind of explained it. So when we write a budget, we try to be clear with it. We try to write it down and, do
Talk
everything that we
through
knew,
it.
yeah, talk
Make
through.
sure we
We even going
understand.
through it right now as we revamping our budget because we recently moved and we got some other things that went on, and got some other situations that happened. So we are restructuring our budget and stuff. So just thinking through some of that stuff. Like, this is not like we super professional with this stuff, or we got it all down. Like, we still working through it, but there's things that help. But we a whole lot better now than we were years ago. And like you said, I think the other
Whole
video, like
lot
we,
better.
24 years of marriage coming up this year. So, like, I don't think it's something that you'll get perfect, but it's things that you can do to help, further the process or whatnot. You know what I'm saying? But
use the process.
yeah, so yeah, but yeah. Anything else that you have to say instead of
I don't
just
think so.
smiling like it's all?
I was just going to emphasize the emphasis on the word clear. Clear communication. That's something that we've had to learn with each other. Like, what I think might be clear may not be as clear to him as it's playing through my mind, and vice versa. So, just being clear to put all the specifics out on the table, and to even like take it elementary style, like walking through those things that might seem common sense or seem like it's a no-brainer, so to speak. Just talking through those things, even to make sure we're on the same page, we're understanding which direction we're going to be going, and the work we're going to be putting in, and all that good stuff. So clear is the key word for communication.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good though. Yeah, now go ahead and do your smile again because we're about to head off. Whatever. But anyway,
I'm Rosita.
I'm Damien, and until the next video, we are out. Peace.